is Chet Holmgren, and I'm down to dunk.
This is AJ Mitchell, and I'm down to dunk.
This is Alex Crusoe, and I'm down to dunk.
It's like baby bottle pop. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. This is Adam Flagler, and I'm down to dunk.
Hey, it's Isaiah Hartenstein, and I'm down to dunk.
This is Kason Wallace, and I'm down to dunk.
I can't spell Lucas. Hey, how do you spell Lucas? How do you spell Lucas?
This is Lou Dort, and I'm down to Dort.
This is Nikola Topic, and I'm down to dunk.
This is Dylan Jones, and I'm down to dunk.
This is Isaiah Joe, and I'm down to dunk.
And there's probably like 50 to 75 Beanie Babies.
Give me like your top 3 Pokemon.
Brother, I can't even name.
This is Jay Will, and I'm down to dunk.
Sometimes the way his brain works is it leaves a lot to be desired.
This is Kenrich Williams, and I'm down to dunk.
Charmander.
Charmander.
Or are you more of a Charmeleon guy?
Charmeleon.
This is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and I'm down to dunk.
Schlecht. You know what it means?
Schlecht?
Yeah.
That means like bad.
It means bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's me.
Well, it was a good interview, so it wasn't bad.
J-Dub, year 3, and I'm down to dunk for the 3rd time. Thank you.
Welcome to Down to Dunk. I'm your host, Andrew Schlecht. We're part of the Athletic Podcast Network. With me, as always, on Wednesdays, is my good friend Alex Speers. Alex, what's up?
Hi, Andrew.
Hi, and special guest Fred Katz on the pod. What's up, Fred?
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me on.
We're glad that you could join. I wanted to bring you on because you wrote a feature about Shai Gilgeous-Alexander that is on The Athletic today. It is called How Shai Gilgeous-Alexander Forged His Own Path to the NBA MVP Conversation. And it's really, really well done, first of all. And I thought some of the anecdotes that you got within it, specifically the one that I've been thinking about since I read it, was about his teacher who kind of taught him, like a coach that taught him how to shift gears, which is the trait of Shai. And I've asked him about where did he get that from? A lot of people have asked him where he gets that from, and he has never really given this answer before. And so I just thought that was one, good job tracking that down. But it's his former club coach, Dwayne Washington, who was a teacher at St. Thomas More Catholic Secondary School. Tell me about how you got in contact with Dwayne and what that process was like and what he was like to chat with about Shai.
It was a really fun conversation. I quoted him many times in that story. He was very open and very fun. And it was really funny. He had this tendency where he kept saying, Shai doesn't like all of his secrets getting out, so I can't really expand on this. And then he would expand, which is a reporter's trait.
Yeah.
And he wouldn't go to the places that Shai didn't want him to go to because they're still very close. But, we got into a conversation about he wasn't just Shai's basketball coach. He wasn't just his club basketball coach growing up. He was also, like you said, a teacher, and he taught physical education and he taught science. And because he taught science, he kind of had this area of expertise where he was explaining to Shai basketball through science. And so he taught him about acceleration and deceleration. He kind of compared him, like you said, to a car with 4 gears. And you never want to go at 4th gear because then you lose control. And then you want to vacillate between 1st, 2nd, and 3rd gear your whole way through. And he came up with formulas that Shai could use that I got into. How'd I track him down? I don't remember. Somebody gave me his number. I don't honestly recall how I got his number. So I promise I'm not hiding it. I wouldn't hide it. Yeah. I don't remember how I got his number. Somebody gave me his number. And I shot him a text and he very happily spoke to me. Shai was not the one who gave me all of the gear stuff. That was from Dwayne Washington and kind of my talking to him. And the way that I eased in with him was I made a baseball analogy, which I originally had in an earlier draft to the piece, which I took out because I have one editor who kind of our inside joke is that I make too many baseball references in my basketball stories. But I said to him, I feel like there are so many great players who play like Randy Johnson pitched. And Shai is more like Greg Maddux, where he's playing with speeds, and he's got a 92-mile-an-hour fastball, but he's just painting corners, and he's throwing the perfect pitch all the time. And he's got an unbelievable two-seamer that's going to paint the black. I don't normally go into this much detail on the baseball and my basketball stories. You know, that two-seamer low and into left-handers that looks like it's going to hit the knee, but then just backdoors over the inside corner. My goodness, what a great pitch from Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. So I gave him that analogy, and I was like, what do you like? Do you agree with that analogy? He was like, oh, 100%. So we just got into a conversation about his pacing. And my mission from the beginning was Shai plays at a pace that nobody else plays. It's not that he plays at a better pace than anybody else. There's no such thing as a good pace versus a bad pace if it works for you. It's just that he plays at a different pace from anybody else. And I guess, I was a Knicks beat writer. I covered Jalen Brunson for years. And he's another guy who plays at a pace. And so honestly, covering Brunson kind of every single day kind of gave me more of an appreciation for like, where did this stuff come from? How did this start? It normally starts at a young age. You don't normally move at a normal conventional pace, and then you get to college and you change it all up. Normally starts at a young age. So I was like, let's go find people at a young age, and then we'll figure out the rest.
Yeah, I think what was interesting about that to me is, now Shai is like, leading MVP candidate. We see how great he is. And so there's an assumption in my head, okay, he was like he always had this talent coming up. But kind of the picture you paint in the story is he almost needed to develop these skills at that time when he was younger because he was smaller. He wasn't the fastest guy. Like, he needed something else for him to elevate himself above the others on the court. And so it sounded like it was his work ethic and then kind of learning this different way to play basketball through science, which I just thought was so cool, because usually when you think about guys who like really had to like struggle to get to the NBA, you're talking about guys who are like, the 8th, 9th, 10th man on the bench. And we're talking about the MVP who was in that position and got to this position in the NBA, which is just so cool.
Yeah, you know what I think is really cool, and I thought about a way of weaving this together, but I just couldn't figure out a way to do it that wasn't contrived. But I feel like the other top MVP candidate has the exact same story. Like, isn't Nikola Jokic the exact same thing, but just in a big man?
Yeah.
Where it's like nobody looked at Nikola Jokic and was like, oh, those physical gifts blow you away. You have to actually watch him play basketball in a 5-on-5 game in order for him to blow you away. Second round pick, and just figured it out intellectually. And nobody's ever, no matter what happens the rest of Jokic's career, and no matter what happens the rest of Shai's career, nobody's ever going to look at those two guys and think, he had some more left on the table, either because of effort or because he didn't maximize his talent or whatever else.
Yeah.
There are a lot of guys who work insanely hard and play insanely hard, but you look at them and you're like, that guy maybe for whatever reason didn't maximize his talent, or could have maximized his talent a little bit better if he just did this, or he just had this amount of humility that allowed him to work on his flaws or whatever else. And I think it's true for both those guys, where it's like those guys come back with something new every single year. And those guys have maximized their talent to a degree that very few players, even in the NBA sphere, do.
Yeah, another anecdote from the piece was about like the guys that Shai works out with in the summer, which is really just his friends, called they call their group chat Sunrise Training, because they work out early in the mornings. But you talked about Stefan Borovac, who joined this group basically because they didn't have anyone that was taller than 6'2", and they just needed somebody big, and he just happened to be around. Tell me about like Stefan and like that whole thing, and kind of like what stuck out to you about that particular story.
Yeah, I just love that, because all of it, the reason I made that anecdote the lead, and the reason why I made that the lead, is because it was so makeshift, it's just like a thing that you would do when you're 12 years old and you need an extra person for pickup, and there's another kid shooting around on the adjacent court, and you're like, hey, want to come play with us? Where it was like he works out with 6 of his best high school friends, and a guy named Nate Mitchell, who's been an assistant with Team Canada with Shai for a very long time, has known Shai for a very long time. And they wanted to work on post-up drills starting in, I want to say it was the summer of 2021. It might have been 22, but it was a few summers ago. And they wanted to start working on post-up drills. And like you said, none of Shai's high school friends, because his high school friends are not Chet Holmgren and Casey Wallace. Like, his high school friends are Joe Schmo and John Doe. Like, those are his high school friends. So, sorry for crapping on your high school friends, Shai. Trust me, I'm sure Joe Schmo would absolutely annihilate me in a game of one-on-one. But compared to NBA players, like, these are not NBA players. These are 6'2" guys who are unbelievably dedicated friends. Like, what amazing friends, right? They get up at 6 a.m. every morning in the summer just to help their friend from high school work out so that he can be at his best. Like, everyone shows up every morning. What amazing friends. I was going to delve into it more, but Scott Cacciola did a story on kind of the Sunrise training group a few years ago, and like the culture of the Sunrise training group. And he did such a good job. There just wasn't that much on the bone, but that was before Steph entered the picture. And he was they had to do post-up drills, and Steph was literally shooting around on the adjacent court in the same gym. And he was 6'8", and he was making his jumpers, and he dunked a couple of times. And Nate Mitchell, the Team Canada coach, walked up to him and was like, "Hey, we need somebody to guard Shai in post-up drills. You come in tomorrow and just do it?" And Steph was like, yeah, 100%. I spoke to Steph. I didn't end up quoting him in the story, but I spoke to him about like what it's like to guard Shai, be the designated post defender for the possible NBA MVP. And he was very funny about it. Like, he wants to be a coach and has started, like, he was coaching a youth team at the time. He had recently graduated from college, and he was coaching a youth team at the time and wanted to be a coach. And he, from his perspective, it wasn't completely selfless on his part, because he was like, well, I want to be a coach. Maybe I should just take this opportunity to coach Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. That seems like a good way into the door. So props to him for absolutely making the right decision. I believe he's actually doing stuff with Team Canada now. So they love him, and the connections have been really good. But he honestly had some really good quotes about guarding Shai in the post that I didn't include in the story because I just, it got too long and it felt kind of redundant. But like, there were some quotes. Let me find this. There were a couple of quotes that were just like really, really, really funny, where like every once in a while he would get like, okay, he almost has this energy about him where if you get a stop or two on him, it's almost like he just stepped it up a notch. He hits another gear. He'll give you this look where it's like, okay, you're done for the day. With Shai, it's just like, okay, one stop and all right, it's over now. Whatever he has going on upstairs is mental. It's just something different. So I thought that was a really, really fun quote from a guy who has to guard Shai every single day over the summers in post-up drills, and who Shai, no question. Like, he's stopped him a few times. He's 6'8", and it happens. And you got 5 defenders swarming him, 4 more on top of him. But apparently when he stops him, he's like, oh, I don't stand a chance next time.
I feel like we've seen that in games though, because like sometimes when Shai goes up against a really good defender, it's almost like you can see him on the court trying to figure out a new way to break this guy down. And it doesn't always work. Sometimes there are some really good defenders in the NBA, but like inevitably, I just feel like more than any other star, whatever you throw with him, he's never going to like give up or like allow you to take him out of the game. He's going to try to figure out a way to get around it first.
Yes, I think that's definitely true. And I think it's similar for a lot of the great players in the league, which is if you throw the same coverage at one guy, you throw the same defender at one guy throughout a game, certainly throughout a playoff series. A lot of these guys are so smart and have seen so much and experienced so much that eventually they're just going to figure it out. Shai is absolutely on that level and one of the elite ones on that level. Jokic is one of the elite ones on that level. LeBron is one of the elite ones on that level. You know, the guy who I really do compare Shai to the most, just in terms of style, he's a better player than Jalen Brunson, but they go about the game very similarly in terms of their approaches to basketball, their philosophies on basketball, and the ways that they have, you know, I was talking about maximizing talent. Brunson is like a 6'2" version of that. He's not as good as Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. He's not the defender he is. He's not quite that level of a scorer, but he's obviously an incredible all-NBA caliber player who finished 5th in MVP voting last year. And, you know, with those two guys specifically, because they play with such intellect, what happens is if you ask what's the best way to defend Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, you can't really give an answer, because what, let's say, the analytics might tell you that the best way to guard Shai Gilgeous-Alexander on a pick and roll is to blitz him, which actually isn't true. He does well out of blitzes. Let's say the best way to do it is to switch. Well, eventually Shai is going to figure out a new way to attack you when he sees enough switches. He's going to see how your defense is maneuvering, and you're going to have to go to something else. And the analytics might tell you that the Thunder score 1.15 points per possession or whatever it is out of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander blitzes on pick and rolls, because he's really good at giving up the ball, and all those Thunder guards are really good at rolling off of screens, and Caruso can secondary create, and Casey Wallace can secondary create, and so on and so forth. But you might just have to do that because he figured out the switch, so you got to go to something else. You might put Dyson Daniels on him if you're in Atlanta. You might put Dyson Daniels on him, but eventually you're going to have to throw something else at him because he's going to figure it out. Like, that's why I included an anecdote in there about him watching basketball with Lou Dort in the bubble, where Dort was just kind of amazed by how he was able to figure out what should come next when they were watching basketball together. And that was when Lou told me that he really realized the breadth of Shai's basketball knowledge. And I think that's, for the guys who get there in an intellectual way, I think that's true for a number of them, and definitely for Shai.
I don't want to give away your whole piece, so I'll just ask one more question, and then we'll talk a little bit about this Rockets game and preview the Grizzlies game. I just want to know, like, who is your favorite person to talk to within the Thunder? Like, who is, like, what were some of, like, your best, like, conversations that you had with people as you're, like, trying to dig up stuff about Shai, and, like, what were those conversations like, and who did you enjoy talking to the most?
That's tough. That's tough. I mean, I've known Isaiah. I spoke to Isaiah Hartenstein for the story. I've known him for a very, very long time. He gives me a hard time in every single interview that I've ever done with him. And then he just does the interview anyway, because he enjoys giving me a hard time. I mean, I thought Shai was really good for the story. I thought Shai was really illuminating and honest, and very willing to give me the time, which was really cool. I actually got him a couple of times for this. I got him on the front end for this of the story before I had done most of the interviews. And then I did most of the interviews and kind of got a bunch of these details that we've already discussed. And I was like, I want to hear Shai's perspective on this. And I was able to get him a second time to kind of bookend it and confirm some details, get his perspective on some more details. So I really enjoyed just talking to him and getting to talk ball with him. And I mean, look, the story is about him. So the most important person that you can get in a lot of those cases is him. I'm used to, like, when I covered the Thunder, I was used to doing Thunder features on a star point guard who wouldn't talk to me when I would do the feature story.
I was going to say, yeah.
I mean, I've written so many features in my life between covering him with the Thunder and covering him when I was a Wizards beat writer. I've done so many features in my life covering on Russell Westbrook, and I've never gotten him one-on-one, which honestly is kind of fun.
Yeah.
Like, it's kind of like, you know, the Food Network show Chopped.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, you know how sometimes you'll be on Chopped or you'll be watching Chopped and they'll be like, all right, today you have to make a souffle. And everyone will be like, I know how to make a souffle. That's like a tough food, but I'm a chef. I know how to make a souffle. And they're just making their souffles, and it's 15 minutes into the show. And the judges are like, twist, you can only use tree bark to make your souffle. And everyone's like, oh my God, tree bark? How can I make a souffle only using tree bark? What do we do? And everybody freaks out. And then they just end up figuring out how to make an unbelievable souffle out of tree bark. Like that's what it's like writing a feature on Russell Westbrook, where it's like you have to write a feature about this first ballot Hall of Famer who is amazing and also like controversial. So there's going to be conflict in this naturally in telling the story. And some people love him and some people don't. And he's got personality and passion and all this stuff. It's like, oh, well, that's easy. And it's like, but he's not going to talk to you. And you're like, oh no, what do I do? So you gotta have to master that. So it's a kind of a fun game. I'm actually not even being sarcastic. It's a fun game, but it's a lot easier when the guy will just talk to you. And I definitely enjoy it and appreciate it when someone gives you the time.
I don't know if you saw this article, but this is the second article in 2 weeks that I've read featuring Dwayne Washington. There was an article in the Willamette Week about Shaedon Sharpe, and I guess they're from like the exact same place. And Shaedon's trainer used to be one of the guys who would let Shai into those 5 a.m. workouts. His name's like Francis. I don't know how to pronounce his last name. It's like Kiepwe or something like that. But he had a quote in this article said, if Shaedon had Shai's work ethic naturally, it would be a different story. That's why I'm here to kind of put that in him. It was all about like how like Shaedon and Shai grew up in similar areas, but came from like completely different backgrounds. And because of Shai's background, it turned him into like this, like, you know, crazy person who was coming at 5 a.m., 6 a.m. every day. And he actually described Shaedon Sharpe as like being born with a silver spoon in his mouth, which I thought was just so interesting. This is his current trainer in Portland describing him this way. And he was kind of contrasting, comparing these two guys who are both wildly talented, but have taken like very different paths, in part because of their underlying work ethic and kind of underlying natural talent too. I mean, Shaedon Sharpe is like probably, I mean, he was like a bigger prospect than Shai coming out of high school because of that natural talent. But I just thought that it's a really good article. If people want to go read it, it's free to read.
I will. That is a good suggestion. That's a hell of a thing to say about Shaedon Sharpe on the record.
I know.
About your own clients.
For real.
Yeah.
I mean, for what it's worth, when I ask people when I ask Shai, like, where's the drive come from? Where's the work ethic come from? He's just like, I've always had it, which is not a lie. Definitely true.
Yeah.
When I ask other people who are close to him, where's it come from? They all say his parents. They all say his parents. His mother was a 2-time Olympian. And my personal favorite thing that I uncovered for this story is that his mother gives him crap for making only half as many Olympics as she did, which I think is the most obvious. It's obviously playful on her part, but that is the most unbelievable bragging point. Oh, you made the Olympics? Well, guess what? Less than me. Like, what an unbelievable bragging point at the dinner table. But his mother is I don't know his parents, but his parents have been described to me by everybody as very, very disciplined and kind and very what's the way to put it? Motivating. And his father is a basketball coach, is kind of a local community leader where Shai is from, is very well respected where Shai is from. And so he's got these two very, very stable forces at home who are raising him to be like this, raising him to be exceedingly diligent. I mean, I think something else that comes across about Shai in this, or at least that I tried to come across with Shai in this, is how diligent he is. How when he was just like a little kid, he wasn't just doing drills. He was then taking out a notebook and he was writing down each step of the drill. Yeah. This is what I'm supposed to do. So that way, when he came back at 6 a.m. by himself as a kid in the morning, and he would come back by himself at 6 a.m. to the school gym, and he would do these drills, he would bring his notebook, he would look in his notebook and be like, okay, here's what I'm supposed to do. And he would know exactly how to do it, and he wouldn't mess up the drill. And he would sit in there and he would study his notebook so he didn't have to read the notebook during practices. So he could just do it correctly over and over again, ball handling drills, shooting drills, whatever else. And that's an unbelievably disciplined thing for a 12 or 13 or 14-year-old to do. You know, when I was 14, when I was in school, they would give us plan books. We'd have to write down our homework in plan books.
Yeah.
I never wrote down my homework in plan books. I never did it. I'd get in trouble for not writing down my homework in plan books all the time. And then guess what? I'd forget to do my homework all the time. And they'd be like, you are awful. How have you not failed out of this school? What are you doing here?
The line in your article that really summed up like how different Shai is from me or from any of us is the line where he was like, yeah, I couldn't dribble with my left hand until, and in my head, I'm thinking, okay, he's going to say like age 15 until age 9. Like, yeah, I couldn't dribble with my left hand until age 9. Like, what? 9?
You know,
like, yeah, so that funny. Seems really believable.
You know, you know what's really funny? That's such a funny observation. Somebody wrote in the comments like every 9-year-old who's not right hand dominant is just a lefty. And
yeah,
I thought was a really funny comment. And after that, and what you just said, I wish I didn't really note the absurdity of that, honestly. Like I didn't realize it until you're really saying it now. You're right. It is the standard that he holds himself to, where he's like, yeah, I was pretty right hand dominant. So I was 9. Yeah, I should have asked him, like, Jay, when did you really get posture correct? Oh, I couldn't even stand on my own 2 feet till I was 8 months. Like, couldn't even do it. I wish I had noted the absurdity of that, because you're so right. Like, that is the way that he phrases that. I couldn't even dribble with my left hand until I was 9 years old. Yeah, and then I started working on it every day.
I was 9.
I was a mess.
I was unemployable until the 4th grade. But you're so right. I wish I had noted the absurdity of that, because it's such a great view. It's such a great entry into his mental.
Yeah.
Like we were talking about his mentality. It's such a great glimpse at it, where it's like the standard he holds himself to is like, you're 9 and you're not ambidextrous yet.
Right.
Yeah.
What
is wrong with you?
Why even go on with life?
Yeah.
What are you doing? You're just gonna write your in-class essays with the same hand the rest of your life? Please.
Right. Yeah. As somebody who just finished coaching a 4th grade team, I did not have any of my 4th graders that held themselves to that standard. I'll tell you that.
Well, that's on the coach, though.
It for sure is. I did not teach them about gears. Yeah, it was bad. Hey, go check out Fred's piece at The Athletic today, please.
Thunder Twitter would kill you. Thunder Twitter would just be like, this guy should be fired. Be over. Yeah,
100%. Fired.
Why won't he play any double big lineups? And you're like, no one's big. You're like, I don't care. Right. They kill you for not going out and signing a big. Can't get a rebound.
They're all under 5'2". All of them.
Did you know Andrew? Do you know Andrew hasn't signed anybody who's made more than the mid-level exception since Nenad Kristic?
Listen.
Wow. Sleep at the wheel. Andrew, are there any big kids on your team? Because if people don't know, Andrew was the big kid on our team. He was like at least a head taller than everyone.
Yeah, it's true. Archie Archie is the biggest kid on the team.
Oh, really?
My son. Nice. Yeah.
Is he getting down there in the post, or is he one of these new age bigs going out to the 3-point line?
He loves to operate from the nail at the free throw line, and he's like actually like a really good passer.
Oh, he's like a Sabonis.
He's a little bit of a Sabonis, where we'll throw the ball into him, because it's like all zone defense. This is stuff that people do not want to know about. But we'll throw the ball to him.
Soft. They're afraid of him.
They're afraid of him. Anyways, he'll operate from there, and he'll pass guys open, which is pretty fun to watch. So the Rockets played in Oklahoma City on Monday night. The kind of Rockets, actually, which is funny because like almost everybody was out for them Monday, and then everybody played for them against Indiana last night, and they still lost both games. But I thought it was at least interesting to watch the Rockets that night with Reed Sheppard in the lineup. You got to see a lot of Cam Whitmore, 40 minutes of Cam Whitmore. But Shai had 51 in this game. He was just absurd. Another fun little matchup for the Thunder, and one that really didn't feel like was in question much throughout the night. Do you have any leftover thoughts from the Rockets game, Al?
I just feel like this is what all Thunder games are right now, where it's like you really can't pay attention the first 3 quarters. You just got to sit back, just let the game play out. Because then in the fourth quarter, they decide, okay, we'll play defense for 5 minutes, get this game over with. And so many of the games post All-Star break have felt that way, where I forget the recent game where it was like really bad. It might have been the Spurs game. Yeah, the Spurs game. In the first half, where you're just like, is something wrong with the Thunder? Is this team falling apart? And then the fourth quarter hits, and it's like, oh, okay, they're fine. They're fine. They actually,
they're good,
them, and everything's fine. So yeah, it was a weird game. I thought it was way more interesting from Houston's perspective, because just seeing that they have those 2 guys, Cam Whitmore and Reed Sheppard, that have just like not been able to. If they were on any other team, like if they were on the Wizards, they would be playing 30 plus minutes a night every night for 82 games. And you see them get that shot, and all of a sudden, like, they look incredible. Reed scores 25, Cam Whitmore scores 27 against the Thunder. And I'm just so interested to see how that plays out with Houston, because as good as they've been this season, they still like need a number 1. And who knows, they might have that number 1 on their bench and just not getting the opportunities they would need to develop into that player. And so I'm just super interested to see how they handle their roster over this summer, because it feels like they're going to make a big move, but I just hope they don't give up on some of these pieces too early.
Yeah. Are you talking about Reed mostly when you're saying that? Like,
yeah, but even like Cam Whitmore, I mean, I know he gets like more minutes than Reed, but he's still not getting the opportunity that he would in any other situation. For the season, he's averaging 17 minutes a game. And like, there were moments in that game where it's like, damn, this guy is like really strong. And like, he is so powerful around the rim, even though he's not super tall. Like, I would love to see this guy in another setting where he's got more on his plate, because I feel like there's something there. But
he played 7 minutes last night, by the way, against Indiana.
Yeah.
You know what? Can I respectfully disagree with Alex?
Yeah.
Specifically on Cam Whitmore.
Okay.
I think there's a world with the way that Cam Whitmore plays, that if he were on a team like, say, the Wizards, and it was just like, go make it the Cam Whitmore show, that he develops a lot of really bad habits. I think a lot of guys with his skill set, the way that he plays, like for him, what he's got to get better at in order to really become good is knowing how to pick his spots and kind of adding discipline to his game, understanding how to play within 5 as opposed to within 1. And he is playing for obviously a really good coach on an incredibly disciplined team where you got to be locked in every single second. And sometimes those 17 minutes that you get, because it's like you got to play the right way during those 17 minutes, can have a much greater effect on you long term than if you were with the Wizards and they were like, here's 18 shots every single night, no matter what. And then all of a sudden you get the bad team, good stats label tossed at you. And sometimes those are wrong, but sometimes they're right. Sometimes you look at a guy and it's like, damn, the numbers are really good. And they eventually go to a good team and it's like, they can't adapt. That's already who they are. So I think sometimes, like, if you're getting enough playing time, then like it can actually have good effects on you, because it can really hone in the right types of skills for you. There's something there with Cam Whitmore, though. I don't I don't disagree with you. He is extremely talented. He is an incredibly talented scorer. I'm with you.
Yeah.
The Thunder
I just
do that
wonder-
thing in the fourth quarter too, where it's crazy. They're just like, all right, now it's over.
Yeah.
It's kind of annoying because I feel like in this run up to the playoffs, their defensive rating is going to drop. It's already happening. I feel like there's going to be these cracks that start to appear that I don't think are actual cracks. They're just like a function of this being March in the NBA. And this is just how some teams are going to look, especially when they have like a 9.5 game lead or whatever it is in the Western Conference. And I listened to your pod, the last one you did with Rylan, and I completely agree. Like I'm just not worried about anything I'm seeing right now. Like I would love the double big to get more experience, and I know that at times it's going to be rocky, but I think Mark has already shown his hand that I have a feeling once we get to the playoffs, that double big isn't going to be something we're seeing like 25 minutes a night. I think they're going to use it more sparingly. I don't know. Do you feel that way, or do you feel like they're going to just unleash this double big when they get into the playoffs?
I think it's probably their third lineup, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Like as far as like preference, because I think that they have always kind of loved the idea of playing more spread out, and I think they would use it. I mean, I think I would liken it to like the 2016 run when they used Cantor and Adams against San Antonio.
Spurs, yeah.
And it like really worked. And so they used it a ton.
Yeah.
Because it really, really like messed up the Spurs offense. And so I think that there could be a scenario and there could be a team where it's like, hey, the best lineup for us is this one. But I think like the Thunder's like if I was like the Thunder's fastball is Chet at center with Hartenstein coming off the bench. Like that's what it is. And that's what they'll use for the most part, as long as Chet is healthy. And then I think using Hartenstein as a bench guy, I think makes a ton of sense. And then you can mix and match everybody because they have 10 guys that they really trust to play their style of basketball. So they have an embarrassment of riches when it comes to their roster. But yeah, I don't foresee them, like you said, playing it a ton unless the matchup calls for it. And which it's funny just looking across the West. Like who would that team even be? I guess would be my question. In the Western
it used to be the
Conference
Lakers.
playoffs.
That was the team that we always pointed to. It was like, man, it would be nice to be a little bit bigger against the Lakers.
Definitely not them. And maybe it's Denver. Like maybe
Yeah,
you would want.
They don't match up with Dallas. I'll tell you that right now. They can't. Everybody knows they can't beat Dallas.
Can't beat Dallas.
Couldn't beat Dallas last year. It's the same situation now. Can't beat Dallas now. No way. I do think it's Denver for what it's worth.
Yeah.
If I had to make the prediction, I think it's Denver. What we've seen in playoff series, like what was the reason Denver lost to Minnesota last year? It was because Gobert wasn't really the one guarding Jokic on a lot of those plays. It was that Towns guarded Jokic. Towns, for all of his defensive faults, effort is not one of them, and size is not one of them. So they were just like, Towns, just give Jokic hell. Throw elbows, throw forearms, throw wrists, throw heads, do whatever you possibly can to just shove him out of wherever he wants to be. And Rudy Gobert is going to be right there waiting to help. And I think that's what you can do. You can have, in this scenario, it's Hartenstein, who's kind of the brawnier, better post defender, and Hartenstein is guarding, and you have Shai, who's kind of the better shot blocking helper. You have Shai kind of roaming off of maybe Aaron Gordon. You might have Shai on Russell Westbrook, if they're going to run with that starting lineup. Or Shai, what am I saying? Chet, not Shai. You might have Chet on Russell Westbrook, and you have him just roam. Yeah. And when Jokic turns into the lane, all of a sudden you got Hartenstein, who's an excellent defender, guarding him in the post, and you've got Chet coming over and help, and you don't have to worry as much about Westbrook on the perimeter. But I mean, look, Denver is also so dependent right now on if Aaron Gordon is playing and if his threes are going in, on if Jamal Murray is hot. They don't have a ton of shooting. You don't have to worry that much about Christian Brown because while he'll hit a three, he's not a high volume shooter. You could not guard Brown all game, and it's not like he's going to take 10 threes. He's just going to take 3 or 4, and he's going to cut off there. And Westbrook, you can leave open too. So depending on what lineups that Denver decides to go with, I could I could definitely see that being the team where it makes a lot of sense. And maybe there's another side to it. Maybe it ends up being a team like the Lakers for the exact opposite reason, because the Lakers only have Jackson Hayes at center.
Yeah.
And maybe it's just like you can pulverize them. Maybe you can just pulverize them on the boards, and Hartenstein and Chet are good enough. I'm not as out on the double big lineup as everybody else seems to be, for what it's worth.
I'm not out on it either. I actually don't even really understand people just like piling on it. Like and I still stand by what I said earlier. I don't think they're going to use it that much, but I think it's been pretty effective. I mean, the last time I even looked at the numbers, like those two on the court together is a pretty significant positive. So I don't really understand people's perspective on that, I guess.
And Mark Dignault flatly said it. Like, they're up 11 games in the Western Conference standings. Like, this is the time. His word, not mine. It would be, quote, irresponsible not to use this time to find out as much as you can about your team. When you are in a position where you know where you are going to be in the standings when the season ends, whether that's because you know you're going to be the 1 seed, or because you know you're going to be in the lottery, or whatever else, what your mission for the rest of the year has to be is to find out everything you can about your team, so you have as few questions that you don't know the answers to when the season ends. And that's true for a team like Philadelphia, who's like, oh no, what the heck are you doing? Like, you got to find out as much about like Tyrese Maxey right now as you possibly can. And that's true for a team like the Thunder. It's true for a team like the Knicks, who are definitely going to be the 3, or Boston, who's definitely going to be the 2 in the East. Like, Cleveland, who's definitely going to be the 1. Like, find out everything you can. Try out as many lineup combinations as you can, because you want to have actual evidence that you can point to in the playoffs when these sorts of things happen. You could be like, oh, this lineup works in general. This lineup works against this group and not that group. By the way, according to Clean the Glass, Chet and Hartenstein have played 248 possessions together so far this year, which is not enough to make any sort of grand statements in any direction. However, the Thunder are plus 8.8 per 100 possessions in those lineups.
Yeah.
So it's not like we've seen like, oh no, they're getting destroyed or something like that. Like,
I think if the interesting part about that stat though is that it's the offense that has been really good. Like, the defense has been not good at all. I mean, the on NBA.com they have it as a 117 when they're on the court, which is super interesting, because that obviously was the part of. I was like, oh well, that will be fine. We just got to see how these guys work together offensively, and that has clicked a little bit better than the defense has so far, which is interesting, and I want to see more, obviously, but wasn't what I would have expected.
Now, do you know part of the reason why the offense is that high, though? It's not just unbelievable. They've shot unbelievable in those lineups, so that'll come down, obviously. But their offensive rebounding at an absolutely elite rate.
Yeah.
And their defensive rebounding also, even though they're not getting stops, their defensive rebounding at an absolutely elite rate. And so if you go up against a team that can't get boards, all of a sudden the Thunder, who for like a couple of years now we've talked about, especially defensive rebounding being a problem for them, and they're low in defensive rebound rate again this year. All of a sudden, that could be something that could be a weapon for them. Like, you're just creating extra possessions, and they run well off of misses too. And if you can rebound really well for the Thunder, that is such an incredible addition to them specifically, because they are the most turnover happy defense in the league. So if you are creating extra possessions for yourself by getting tons of offensive rebounds on one end and by getting turnovers on the other end, your defense can be worse than your offense, and you can still win games because you're just winning the possession game. So that's an element that you have to consider with those lineups as well. And I'm not arguing, oh, that's the lineup you play all the time. I'm just saying, like, there's a world where that lineup, independent of who they're going up against, that lineup becomes important just to create extra possessions for them, because that is the most important advantage you can have in a basketball game, is taking 15 or 20 more shots than the other team.
Yeah,
That's so
and that's the way the
difficult.
Thunder have operated all year. Is like they are geared to win the possession battle, and they consistently do. Like, go look through all the box scores. It's very rare that they don't win the possession battle. Like, it's extremely, extremely rare. Let's talk about the death of the Mavericks before we get out of here, because it was just a few months ago. This was like the rivalry of what we thought would be the next like 5 to 10 years for the Thunder, was like this battle between these two teams that are like so close in proximity. It felt like the Mavs had the Thunder's number, and they beat them in a playoff series. They beat them this year in the regular season multiple times. And it just felt like this is the team that, like, for whatever reason, just has a grip on the Thunder. And now they're just gone. Kyrie Irving tore his ACL. And now Anthony Davis, who may or may not have surgery upcoming, is deciding whether he wants to play again this season. I would look at your hometown Blazers, Al, and say they have an opportunity in front of them to go grab a play-in spot at 10. And the Mavericks are not immune to this. They did this the year before last. They completely pulled the plug and just tanked the rest of the season. And that actually ended up helping the Thunder that year. But my assumption is that they'll do the same thing, and that they'll try to get a better draft pick this year. And now that team, like, Kyrie's going to, I mean, depending on like what happened to the rest of his knee, like, we know it's an ACL, but like, the reason that my recovery is taking so long is because of the meniscus. Like, is the meniscus intact? Like, there's so many different things that can happen with your knee, and they'll just call it ACL tear. But there's a lot that could happen there that could really keep him out for a very, very long time. And could miss, not obviously he's going to miss the rest of this season, but he could miss all, some or all of next season too, which is in the timeline that was given to us, which is a 3 or 4 year timeline. You're losing 2 of those 3 or 4 years just right out the gate. This is just a disaster.
Yeah, I mean, you think back to trades that were universally hated, where the opinion on them right out of the gate was slanted towards one side, like the Gobert trade or the Paul George to OKC trade back in the day when they got Oladipo and Sabonis. I've never seen a trade where literally the dominant opinion is not just right, but was like perfectly right. Like, everything everyone said that night, the second the trade happened, has come true. They're like everything about trading Luka is bad, and also you're trading for these aging stars who are just going to get injured, and you've shrunk your timeline. What if they get injured? It's like everything has happened. Everything bad that could have happened as a result of this trade has come to fruition. And I can't, like, going back to Luka getting hurt on Christmas Day, the like progression of bad news that the Mavs have gotten, even like Derek Lively's injury, like even before the trade, has just been incredible. I've never seen a fan base have to experience this like slow drumbeat of worse and worse and worse news until you get to this point now where it's like I was listening to DLLS and Tim Cato, and he was like, you really do have to start talking about like the future of this franchise in Dallas. Because like what is available to them going forward? And meanwhile, you don't even have the fans behind you. Like, you've also alienated your entire fan base in this process. Like, what is left at this point? And it's crazy because we're talking about 3 months of events.
Can I just add something to this, which not enough people are talking about? Alex, everything that people said was correct, and you even left out one thing. You know what the second worst trade of the trade deadline was? Quentin Grimes for Caleb Martin,
scoring 30 a night.
Quentin Grimes is going nuts, and Caleb Martin literally hasn't played,
and he's going to the G League. Like,
after they made that trade, like, Caleb Martin is older than Quentin Grimes, makes more money than Quentin Grimes this year, so acquiring him took them back into the luxury tax. It also put them in a position to now they can't sign an extra guy because they're too close to the first apron, which they're hard capped at because of the Klay Thompson trade. They And Quentin Grimes, they have no one to initiate their offense. And Quentin Grimes is literally went for 44 the other night, went for 30 last night, 20 in the first half, is just going nuts on the Sixers. And this is not hindsight being 2020. When they traded Quentin Grimes for Caleb Martin, by the way, and then Caleb Martin failed his physical and they just added an extra second round pick to let it go through. And Martin still hasn't played. So that I always thought was interesting. It's like you're trading guys for conditioning reasons, and your Grimes is always healthy, and he has a knee thing lingering from last year, but like he plays. When they made the trade, I literally wrote in my notebook the next morning, why does everyone keep giving away Quentin Grimes?
Yeah, what is the deal?
Quentin Grimes is good. Like he's
player.
like legitimately good. Like Quentin Grimes is a 40% 3-point shooter, a very good on-ball perimeter defender, a solid off-ball perimeter defender. He's not just like only a shooter. He can attack closeouts really well. He's a good driver. He's a pretty good finisher. He's a smart decision maker when he's driving to the hoop. He's not going to make insane behind the back, no look passes, but he's going to make the right dump off or kick to the proper corner or whatever else. Like Quentin Grimes is like an ideal, really good role player. Like he's 23. What are you doing?
Yeah. It didn't make sense that Detroit gave him to Dallas in the first place.
No. Yeah. But Detroit is notoriously bad at salary dumps. Detroit is really bad at receiving salary dumps. Every time Detroit receives a salary dump, there's always something in the outgoing package where I'm like, what? Where it's like, that was the Tim Hardaway trade, and everybody knew the Mavs were going to dump Tim Hardaway because they had to get off of his salary.
Yeah.
Because they had to get under the first apron in order to sign and trade for Klay Thompson, because you can't go over the first apron if you acquire a player via sign and trade. And they had to get off of Hardaway's $17 million or whatever it was, telegraphed to the whole league. And even given that, like, I figured they're going to have to give up a first, maybe a light first, but a first in order to get off of Hardaway. It was 3 seconds. And then for some reason, Grimes was going back. And I was like, Grimes might be better than Tim Hardaway to begin with.
Yeah.
And then Grimes, he keeps getting traded for guys who are worse than him. The Knicks traded him for Alec Burks and Bojan Bogdanovic, who are both worse than him. And then Detroit traded him for Tim Hardaway Jr., who's having a good year. I think you could argue Tim Hardaway Jr. is better than him, but it's when you factor in age and contract and all of that, it's not the case. Then he gets traded for Caleb Martin, who's a nice player, but isn't as good as him. It's so weird. Everyone just keeps giving away Quentin Grimes. Meanwhile, he's just dropping 30. He's not a problem in a locker room or anything like that. Like, it's not like he's some jerk who can't get along with anyone. It's just a weird thing.
It is really weird. Shout out to Alex for picking him on Slam and Jam as a guy that was going to have a leap after the All-Star break.
He's making himself money.
Yeah, he is.
He's restricted after this year. He's gonna.
I know.
If he keeps doing this, like he's averaging like 18 a game with Philly. Like if he keeps, and now there's no Embiid for sure. Lord knows what Philly's gonna do with like let's put it this way: Quentin Grimes is playing so well that Philly is gonna probably try to shut him down.
They might.
Quentin Grimes.
They won't be able to pay him.
The Thunder should retire Quentin Grimes' number if Philly ends up with the 7th worst record and the Thunder get their pick. because Quentin Grimes averages 30 the rest of the year. They need to just retire Quentin Grimes' number. They have two options: either require Quentin Grimes' number or give Quentin Grimes' number to PJ Dozier. Those are the two options.
It's like it's the inverse of the Muscala shot, though, is what it would be.
Yeah, dude. There's going to be some tank wars. I don't know if you guys saw what the Raptors did last night, but they pulled all of their good players throughout basically a G League lineup, and then Jacoby Walter hit a game-winning shot to beat the Orlando Magic. So Philly still has 2 against the Wizards, 2 against Toronto, and then Utah, New Orleans, Bulls, and Spurs. And those Sixers Raptors games, those could get nasty.
Those are going to be bad. It's going to be like that last game of the season where the Thunder played the Clippers in the empty arena. Yeah, the Daniel Ataru game where it was like Poku was going nuts in the last game. It was like, what is happening? Like, stop. Mark, stop them.
You guys want to hear a wild stat? Speaking of the Raptors,
yeah.
Do you know what the Raptors' remaining strength of schedule is?
Oh, it's
gonna be
30th.
hard for them to think.
Yes.
Right.
it's
Oh, I
awesome.
know it's 30th, but do you know what the number, like what the winning percentage is of their remaining opponents?
It must be like 45 or something.
That's like a normal last place, right? So like Boston's remaining strength of schedule. Boston has the second easiest remaining strength of schedule,
Okay.
436.
Okay.
Minnesota's remaining strength of schedule is 28th. They're right above Boston, 440. That's like a normal bottom of the league. I don't think I have ever seen, with 20 plus games to go in the season, I don't think I've ever seen a remaining strength of schedule so easy. Their opponents have combined for a 358 winning percentage.
Oh my! And if they really,
how is that possible?
I feel like
that's like worse than Ty Cobb's batting average.
Hey, baseball reference.
Another baseball reference.
There you go.
I feel like when people saw that, they were like, the Raptors could theoretically make the play-in. Like if they want to, they probably could make the play-in. But then seeing what they did last night, now I'm like, oh, this is going to be the hardest tank job ever.
Yeah,
like, good luck. You have to.
And that was Orlando, and that was Orlando. It wasn't like this was Washington or this was Utah. Like that was Orlando.
Yeah, Orlando's in a weirdly bad place, though. I didn't see this.
Oh, they're so bad.
Yeah,
I know
they're so bad.
I did not see this coming. Early in the year, I was so impressed with what they were doing and
I know
culture and how they defended. And then Paolo and Franz come back, and it's like, man. I mean, I know Jalen Suggs, and they've had injuries. No Mo Wagner, but like they should be better than they are right now.
Yeah, they're 7-16 since Paolo came back.
Yeah,
jeez,
worth looking into. I don't know why it's been so bad with Paolo, but it's worth looking into.
Yeah,
I don't know why, because they might not even make the playoffs now.
I know.
They'll be in the play-in, but I don't know if
I was going to say I expect them to not. I don't know how you win a playing game, or maybe if it has to be 2. I don't know if they're in that bad of a position.
They're eighth right now. They're half a game up on Atlanta.
Yeah, Atlanta could pass them.
How do you win? How do you win a playing game? Like you just happen to have it against like Atlanta. That's how you win.
Yeah,
that's how you win. You know, like you have they like Miami is 7th right now.
Yeah,
Miami. You know, they could win a game against the Miami.
God, the East playing is so gross. Miami, Orlando, Atlanta, Chicago.
The East play-in is gross. The West play-in is depressing. There's a difference. The West play-in is better than the East play-in, but it's more depressing. Like Minnesota is kind of depressing. Like it's just a group of teams that have like really pissed off their fans. It's Minnesota just pissed off their fans trading Cat. Sacramento is like they finally made a run to the playoffs and then it all collapsed and they pissed off their fans firing Mike Brown, pissed off everybody firing Mike Brown, and then De'Aaron Fox asks out. The Clippers I don't think are depressing. They're just kind of now playing to their abilities. Dallas we already covered. Phoenix is pissed off its fans doing everything that an organization could do wrong. And so like it's just a very depressing situation.
That's why we need the feel good Blazers to make the 10 seed.
Dude, their upcoming schedule is brutal. I think they have the 3rd hardest schedule remaining the rest of the season, but just in their next 10 games, they play Boston, OKC, Golden State, Knicks, Memphis, Denver, Boston, Cleveland. Those are like some of the games in their next 10.
Never mind.
I'll tell you this.
Never mind.
They played Cleveland really well the other night.
They did.
And
every night.
And I will tell you this too. Whatever happens with that team, they're genuinely fun to watch.
Yeah,
they really are. They're genuinely fun to watch. I'm really enjoying watching this run. I think Denny Avdia is really becoming a heck of a player.
Yeah, he's good. Really he runs the offense for them.
He is really good. That guy, I think he is like the evolved modern day version of Lamar Odom. He is really good. Like
Candy
legitimately.
The Candy Man. Does he eat a lot of candy?
That was Olawa Candy.
No.
Wait, I thought Lamar Odom was the Candy Man.
I think.
Lamar Odom loved candy, but the Candy Man on those Clippers teams was Michael Olawa.
He's the Candy Man too. It's on Basketball Reference.
Two Candy Man. They got a Candy Man front court.
He's also nicknamed the Package.
Ew.
And the Goods.
And the Goods.
Ew. His nickname was the Goods. What is up with Basketball Reference nicknames? I feel like if I see somebody's nickname on Basketball Reference, that's how I know that wasn't that guy's nickname.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, we learned about Kevin Durant's nickname last week, the Green Room, which I had not heard before, but apparently has been his nickname since the beginning of his career, and I never once heard it.
How did that start?
It was his dad gave it to him, talking about the Green Room at the draft. So,
but how did that make the site? I've tried to make nicknames to the site, and they've been like inquired to Basketball Reference about it, and they're like, "Well, let's see if they take off. Let's see if it takes off."
I'm like, I got a nickname put on Basketball Reference a few weeks ago, and
really,
it was a real accomplishment. I didn't come up with the nickname, to be clear. Josh Lloyd, who's a fantasy basketball podcaster, does a great job. He has been. I didn't know Josh was the one who came up with this, but Precious Achua was being called on Nick's Twitter the Big Sneeze, which is a great name for a guy's last name is Achua.
That is so good.
It's so good. So I tweeted, I don't know who came up with Precious Achua's nickname being the Big Sneeze, but whoever did deserves a medal or something like that. And Josh, it was Josh Lloyd. Props to him. Such a funny nickname. And Basketball Reference quote tweeted the tweet, like the Basketball Reference official Twitter account quote tweeted the tweet with like a screenshot of his new profile and said like documented or whatever. And now the Big Sneeze is on Basketball Reference. And
Fred, I think this needs to be your next investigative report. Figure out how they make the decision of what to add to Basketball Reference.
Yeah, who's deciding this? Yeah,
who's deciding this? Honestly, that's a good story idea.
It is a great story idea.
How does Basketball Reference decide on these ridiculous nicknames and find the most ridiculous ones and ask him, like, what the hell? Like if you go to Glenn, if you go to Glenn Davis's Big Baby, of course. If you go to his Basketball Reference, one of his nicknames is Large Infant.
Yeah.
It's like we're doing derivations of Large Infant.
That's ridiculous. And it's crazy. Oh my gosh. Al's got to get out of here. But I did want to talk about the injury report real quick about the Thunder play tonight in Memphis. Alex Caruso is out with a left ankle sprain. The dude cannot catch a break. It has been a really wild season of injuries for Alex Caruso. Hartenstein is going to play through this nasal fracture, and then Isaiah Joe is questionable with this low back soreness. See Al. And then for the Grizzlies, they will be without Jaren Jackson, who has this like really bad grade 2 ankle sprain. They'll be without him for a little while. Jay Huff is on G League assignment. Santi Aldama is questionable with right calf soreness. Ja Morant is questionable with a right deltoid contusion. John Conchar is questionable. Scottie Pippen Jr. is questionable. So could be interesting. I would have loved to see a full strength Grizzlies team versus this Thunder team. But it seems like that it won't happen without Jaren Jackson, who I think has been their best player this season, period. But they could be without Ja as well, which would be kind of a bummer, to be honest. I think the Thunder to have played teams like they played Houston without their guys. They obviously played San Antonio without Victor Wembanyama. You know, like I could see it getting a little bit boring, honestly, like looking across and not seeing like the main guys from these teams playing. So I'll be interested to see. Hopefully Ja plays, which will make things at least a little bit more exciting.
Yeah, and when the Grizzlies are all together, it's a really interesting matchup because the Grizzlies run this very interesting offense with very low pick and roll. They've run some more lately, but for the most part, very low pick and roll, a lot of cutting, a lot of off-ball movement. And like we talked about the Thunder's turnovers, the Grizzlies' biggest problem offensively is turnovers. And it's like that's a very interesting juxtaposition there if they're going to play. But you're right. I mean, Jaren Jackson hasn't just been their best player. He's been maybe the defensive player of the year. And we'll see if he has a chance.
Top 3 at the very least.
He has a chance, it sounds like, to potentially return with enough time to still be eligible. He has to play 7 more games in order to be eligible for defensive player of the year. We'll see if gets there and can make it. Otherwise, defensive player of the year is like no Jaren Jackson, no Victor Wembanyama. It's wide open. Like it is. That is a tough call. Is it Evan Mobley? Are you going to go with a perimeter guy? Rare occasion you're going with a perimeter guy. You're going to go with Dyson Daniels. I'm sure there are a lot of listeners to this podcast that are screaming Lou Dort's name.
Yeah.
Andrew, do you have time for me to ask you a question?
Definitely.
So here's something that I've been wondering.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the really interesting things with award voting this year is there are so many players who are going to be all NBA or all defense, or at least deserve to be on the spreadsheet for all NBA and all defense. And their on-offs are just so like weirdly a disaster. Like J-Dub is a good example of this, right? Where the Thunder are like 17 points per 100 possessions worse with J-Dub on the court. He is, of any player who has played at least 500 minutes this year, which is not a lot of minutes. Like we're like, that's like 10 minutes a game if you played less than 10 minutes a game if you played.
Yeah, like AJ Mitchell's played 500 minutes already, and he's been out for most of the season. Yeah,
right, and is like a bench guy.
Mm-hmm.
J-Dub's on-offs are literally the worst in the NBA. Now, when you look at it closer, you can see, well, the Thunder are actually plus 8.4 with J-Dub on. They're 25.4 points per 100 possessions. They're outscoring their opponents by when J-Dub is off. And you look into it and you're like, okay, well, it's because J-Dub runs the bench lineups. And when you have J-Dub, no Shai, they're plus 1.8. When you have Shai, no J-Dub, they're like plus 25. And that's what throws off the numbers. And it's not like they suck with J-Dub on. It's just there's some shooting luck there and crazy ass circumstances, and the fact that he's playing with maybe the MVP, and that the MVP is playing enough minutes without him to throw off the numbers, and he's playing enough minutes without the MVP to throw off those numbers. And it's like, okay, it's not an indictment of J-Dub. You can still feel comfortable throwing him on All-NBA. LeBron has really weird on-offs where they're like -9 or 9 points per 100 worse when he's on, but that's because of weird shooting splits. And there are 2 guys who I'm going to certainly consider for all defense and possibly consider throwing on a defensive player of the year ballot, who have weird defensive on-offs, which is the Hawks are like a little less than 3 points per 100%. Their defense is a little less than 3 points per 100 possessions worse when Dyson Daniels is on the court, which is very weird to me. And I haven't looked into it yet. I don't know the answer, but I will, and I will have to. The other one is the Thunder defense is about 2.5 points per 100 possessions worse when Lou Dort is on the court. I believe he has, of any regular rotation player on the Thunder, I believe he has the second worst defensive on-offs on the team. What do you make of this? Why do you think this is? And how should we analyze this?
Yeah, I mean, with the Lou Dort stuff, I mean, you look at the perimeter defense just doesn't stop. And whenever these guys are playing against second units and backup point guards, and they are being hounded by Alex Caruso or by Cason Wallace, like those lineups, one, they're just by nature of what the lineups are going to be worse than the starting lineups. But because they have like one of the best like point of attack defenses ever in the history of the NBA, I think that is part of that story. It's just like it doesn't stop. And usually when you get to the bench, most of the guys on like NBA benches do not defend like that. Like there are very few guys that I think you would consider like all defense candidates. And I think that if Caruso was healthy, would certainly be an all defense candidate, but he hasn't played enough. I think Cason Wallace is an all defense candidate, at least a guy that you would consider to put on second team. And that guy's come off the bench a lot. Even if he does start, he'll stay in the game and lose when Lou goes to the bench. And so to me, it's more like circumstantial for them. And when you watch the team, similar to when you watch the team with J-Dub, like he's clearly contributing to winning, but like the on-off number in itself is just wonky, especially when you have a team that's as good as the Thunder are and they go on like all these big runs. Like they'll go on like a 22-0 run. And if you're not in there for that run, like it's going to mess with your numbers, and it's not because you were off the court. It just happened because the Thunder have 12 guys that are good. And so to me, like I think that number is unfair to Lou because I do believe like he is outside of Chet. I think he is probably like their most important defender just because he does defend the best perimeter defender every single night. And he's one of the best. And he has all these like little quirks that like really great players have. A lot of people will complain about these quirks, like about like free throw merchants or whatever. But Lou has them on the defensive side where he just knows how to draw offensive fouls. And it is like a specialty of his where he helps them win the possession battle every night because he is guaranteed to get a moving screen on somebody. He is going to catch somebody who is just like just a hair late, and he is going to just barrel into them to get that offensive foul. That's one of his specialties. And like there's nobody better to cover guys like Luka in the NBA than Dort. Like there's not a better player in the NBA than Lou. And so it's unfortunate that that's the way his numbers look, but I think some of it's a little bit fluky and some of it is like it's almost like he's having to pay for the fact that the rest of his team is so good, and the same thing for J-Dub. It's like, it's really just that the rest of the team is so good. It's really has nothing to do with him being bad. And like the J-Dub numbers, I was looking this up on Cleaning the Glass when you have J-Dub on and Hartenstein, Shai, and Chet off, which has been the biggest problems for him, in my opinion, because then you're left with
those small lineups, especially when he was playing center, when those guys were out and all that. Yeah.
And there's a lot of, and there's really not one lineup when you take those guys off the court that sticks out. Like the one that has the most possessions is only 31 possessions. So it's just like so many different lineups that are just thrown out there just for a few minutes here or there, but they're a minus 15 when those three are off and he's on. But then like you just put Hartenstein in with Chet and Shai off and things change pretty significantly for him. They're a +4 when it's he and Hartenstein. And then when you put Hartenstein off and you put Chet in, it's not very many minutes, but like the number is actually like through the roof, which I think is like the fix for this Thunder team is like, just play those two together. When Shai's off, just play those two together. They're +33, but it's in a very limited sample. And so it's like, who did they play? What was happening in those games? I don't think that's not a reliable number, but it does like tell you like, oh, those two are actually pretty good. And then if you add AJ Mitchell to the picture, which I don't think you even should, because I don't think AJ is going to play the rest of the season. But like, it's even better. Like it gets even better. And so like, to me, the problems with J-Dub's numbers is just, some of it was out of necessity where they're having to play like Jay Will and Oos and all these, like basically the guys that are outside of like the top 10-ish players that you don't really trust. Like he played with those guys a lot. Like he played with the guys, the Dylan Joneses, the developmental guys a lot, which has hurt his numbers. So I really don't give a lot of credence to that for him.
Yeah. And J-Dub, it doesn't really concern me as much because people will get caught up on the chasm, how much better or worse your team is when you're on the court versus on the bench. And that chasm with J-Dub is massive. It's 17 points per 100 possessions, which is ginormous, like I said. But it's really because they're just insane when he's off the court. And
Mhm.
it's a great point you make about, J-Dub without a center, because, they had that period earlier this year where J-Dub has to fill in at center when Hartenstein and Holmgren were both hurt. And I actually think J-Dub did a great job with that, but he did a great job with the caveat that he had an impossible task in front of him. Like, he's not actually a center. The reason he did a great job was because he fought his ass off against centers while not being a center and while not having any other center there to help him. That's why he did a great job. The expectation is that he is not going to look as good as Isaiah Hartenstein playing center, because he's not a center. And I think that probably brings down lineups too. I'm more asking on Dort. Part you make a great point on Caruso. When Caruso's in the game without Dort, they have a 99 defensive rating. They allow 99 points per 100 possessions. When Dort is in the game without Caruso, they allow 107. I think part of it on Dort probably has to do with, and I will look into this more to see how much of an effect this has, but I'm sure it has some, is that they tend to match up Dort's minutes with the minutes of whoever is the best player on the other team, because
100%.
Dort is your very typical who's best player in the other team. Okay, Lou Dort guards him, unless it's unless it's Jokic. If your best player is a perimeter player, he's just going to guard the best perimeter player, whether it's LeBron, whether it's Luka, whether it's Trae Young. You're just going to throw Lou Dort on him, and that's what you're going to do. And he's going to have to deal with, the opposing best players positive on offs, whereas the Dallas Mavericks were way better with Luka Doncic on the floor. And whenever Luka Doncic was on the floor against Dallas, Lou Dort was on the floor. So that's going to hurt Lou Dort's on offs, because he's got to deal with the inverse of that effect too. So I'm sure that has something to do with it as well. But he's not the only guy who fits that category. Dyson Daniels, that's something that also may very well be true for Dyson Daniels, and might explain the reason why the Hawks defense is worse with Dyson Daniels on the court as well, because they do the exact same thing. And you watch Lou Dort and you watch Dyson Daniels and you're like, oh, these guys are insane. J-Dub said something earlier this year, which gave me an idea, and I might write a story on it later in the month, which is, he talked about how there should be forget exactly what he said. You say 2 defensive players of the year.
Yeah, there should be a perimeter defensive player of the year and a big man. Yeah.
I love that idea. I don't think it should be perimeter and big man. I think there should be a defensive player of the year. And then similar baseball reference, similar to how baseball has MVP, which pitchers are eligible for, but don't usually win, but they can win. Yeah. Baseball has, but pitchers never really win it. So they were like, let's create our own award for pitchers, because pitchers never really win MVP. And let's create the Cy Young Award. And that's going to hold just as much gravitas. But it's just for pitchers, because they never really win MVP. And if a pitcher has an insane year, he can win both. And every once in a while, somebody does. But for the most part, your MVP is going to go to a position player, and your Cy Young is always obviously going to a pitcher. And I feel like having a defensive player of the year, which is eligible to everybody, and a perimeter defender of the year, which is eligible to perimeter defenders, I would be totally into that. And if there's a perimeter defender of the year, off the top of my head, Lou Dort's on the ballot and Dyson Daniels is on the ballot. And then we can have a conversation about, maybe Tumani Kamara is on the ballot, just an obscene perimeter defender right now. The guy is unbelievable. There are a few others who are having great years, but yeah, it's just interesting. It's interesting with the on-offs. It's worth more looking into. I wanted to hear your opinion. I thought your listeners would appreciate your analysis too.
Yeah, I think Lud, for whatever reason, hasn't gotten the credit that he's due, and he always does when it comes playoff time. People are like, "Oh my gosh, did you see what Lou Dort did last night?" But when it comes to the regular season, the credit's not there for him, which I just find. It's just interesting. I know that once the playoffs come around and everybody sees what Lou Dort does to the best player on the opposing team, I think that he'll get that shine again. But he hadn't even made all defense yet, which is just wild. It just makes no sense to me.
All defense has weird stuff like that, because it tends to fall behind. Like oftentimes when a guy makes his first all defense team, it's like 2 years after he should have made it. Oftentimes when a guy who makes it every year stops making it, it's like 2 years after he should have stopped making it. That's the way it works.
Yeah, that's true.
There's some weird all defense stats you could throw. You like Andre Iguodala made like one all defense team, I think. That's weird.
That makes no sense.
Tim Duncan never won Defensive Player of the Year.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Tim Duncan is the best defender of all time not to win Defensive Player of the Year. Like, how did Tim Duncan not win Defensive Player of the Year ever?
He made 15 all defense teams.
15 all defense teams. Never won Defensive Player of the Year.
Never
There's
won.
Just some weird. I mean, the weirdest one, which by the way, there is a logical reason.
Third was the highest that he ever got in D player voting, and that was in 01.
That's wild to me. Like,
yeah,
it's wild to me. You would think Tim Duncan. I mean, he won MVP in 01, right?
Yeah.
Like, you would think.
No, he's second MVP. He won it in 02. He won it in 02 and 03.
02 and 03. Right. 01 was Iverson.
Yeah.
But you would think that Tim Duncan would have squeaked one out. There's just,
he was fifth in Defensive Player of the Year voting his rookie year. Tim Duncan was. And then never made it.
It's like Wembanyama. Dort will make it this year. He'll make all defense this year. He's gonna.
He better.
He's going.
I'm gonna go berserk if he doesn't. I'm gonna lose my mind if he doesn't.
He's gonna make it this year.
And I know that he was I think he was the first one out last year, and so like I shouldn't be as up in arms as I am about it. But it's like just watching this guy as much as I do. It is insane to me that anyone would think that he's not one of the best 10 defenders in the NBA.
He's going to make it this year, especially now that like a lot of the really good defenders are just not even going to be eligible because of the 65 game rule. And like you look, there's no way that a team will finish with by far the best defensive rating in the league and not have somebody. And it's not like, and there are other amazing defenders on the Thunder.
Yeah.
But it's not like somebody can be like, oh, it's Chet or, oh, it's Hart. Like oftentimes people who maybe don't watch as much but still vote will be like, let's look to the big who's anchoring it. But Chet's not going to be eligible. Hartenstein's not going to be eligible. Caruso's not going to be eligible. He's the familiar name, but he's not going to be eligible. I think Shai's going to get votes. And
Shai will get votes. J-Dub should be on there too. Votes. Like he should be on there.
I don't know if he should be on there. I'll have him. I'm not saying he shouldn't. I'm just saying I don't know.
Here's the deal. Here's my thing, and I don't know if you agree with this or not.
I'll have him on my spreadsheet. Like he'll definitely be on the spreadsheet. I think he's a wonderful defender. He's unbelievably versatile. He is a backbone for what they do. He's so physical, moves his feet great in the perimeter. He's good around screens. His versatility is so important because it allows the Thunder to be able to do what they want to do. Where like, forget about the centers are out, so we guard centers. It's like, there are so many times where they loved cross match. And part of the reason that they cross match, it's not just because Mark Daigneault wants to cross match no matter what, no matter who's out there. They do it because J-Dub gives them the flexibility to be able to do it so that they can put a center on a non-shooter and they could put J-Dub on a center. And it's because they feel comfortable putting J-Dub on a center. And there are very teams that are willing to do that. And there are very teams that are able to do that. Boston will do it with like Drew Holiday on a center, but that's the company we're talking about. We're talking Drew Holiday is like the best defensive point guard of his generation.
You're making my point for me. You're making it all.
No, I know he'll be on the list. There are just a lot of good defenders. I'm just saying, I don't know. I have to run through it. Like 10 is a lot. Like I got
here's my thing is if the Thunder have this historic defense and we're saying that it's not from one guy, shouldn't they have multiple guys on the all defensive team then?
I just don't look at it like that. Because
Fred,
I don't look at it as X team needs X guys. Like, I'm not going to feel beholden to putting Jaylen Brown on All NBA just because I think Boston is awesome and because Jaylen Brown's a great player. I might have him All NBA, but I'm not going to be like, I got to get a second Boston guy in there. I'm not going to be like, I can't have two Knicks because like Towns deserves it. Brunson deserves it. Like those guys are making all NBA. And those guys have cleared Jaylen Brown to me. And I'm not going to be like, oh, I can't have two Knicks who are worse than Boston cleanly. But
my argument would be that the Thunder guys have been that good this year on the defensive end.
They have, but a lot of their best guys aren't going to be eligible. Like if Hartenstein played enough, he'd be in the conversation for sure.
He would be in it because he's only going to get. He'll only get like 60 games if he plays the rest of the season.
He'd be in the conversation for sure. If Caruso played enough, he'd be in the conversation for sure. I think I'll have 4 Thunder players on the spreadsheet. I will have Dort on the spreadsheet, and I'm sure I'll have him on one of the 2 all defense teams. I
better. I'm coming after you whenever the results are released. I'm coming after you,
dude. Before I was even a national NBA writer, when I was just a Knicks beat writer, I literally went out of my way last year to write a freaking whole feature about how insane Lou Dort is defensively.
I know.
I did it legitimately because I was like, how is this guy not made all defense? I know. Lou Dort's an incredible defender. You're not hearing any arguments against that here. Like he's an unbelievable defender. I don't know who you think you're fighting with. It's not me. Lou Dort's awesome. He's an unbelievable defensive player.
I'm fighting with any sentiment that Lou Dort should not be there. With anyone that would hear me, that's what I'm fighting with.
But I'll have J-Dub on the spreadsheet. I'll have Cason Wallace on the spreadsheet. I think he is insanely underrated as a perimeter defender.
He's been incredible.
And I'll have Shai on the spreadsheet, but I don't think I'll end up having Shai on the team.
I don't think Shai. I think it's fair. I think it's fair to have. I think they should have 2. I think they should at least have 2, and I think the games played thing is obviously the thing keeping them from it. I think Chet would have won Depoy if he would have played all season. Like you look at his numbers, like the rim defense numbers are insane. They're crazy.
Yep.
100%. And like he would be deserving of that, especially without Wembanyama. But he's only played 18 games, so he's not going to get there. And then I think Hartenstein is deserving too, but he's like we mentioned, I think he'll only play like between 59 and 61 games by the end of the season, which is not enough. So
yep, not going to be there. But he's been great. He played in an all defense level last year too, in my opinion. But he wasn't eligible last year, even though he played the whole season because of the 20-minute rule.
Oh yeah, that is an insane rule.
It's crazy. Like if you only get 2 games under 20 minutes, otherwise they don't count towards your eligibility. And so like he played like 78 games, 76 games maybe last year.
75 last year. Yeah.
75. But he had an Achilles injury and he was on a minutes restriction for some of those games. And so he was under 20 and he started the year coming off the bench. So he averaged a real amount of minutes, but he didn't have enough games. He ended up playing like 63 eligible games, according to the NBA's count. So he was not eligible for all defense. And he would have been someone who I didn't have a vote last year, but if I had a vote, he would have been on my spread. I don't know if I would have had him in, but he would have been on my spreadsheet last year. He was incredible. I think he led the NBA in defensive estimated plus minus last year. Like he was excellent. He was their defensive.
He's up there this year too. He's up there this year.
He was their defensive backbone last year. He was excellent. So that's not new. I mean, last year, some of these awards they need to get rid of the 65 game thing. Like most improved, you need to get rid of the 20-minute rule for, because like last year, Dante DiVincenzo played 81 games and he wasn't eligible. But it was because he started the year as a bench player.
Yeah.
Then became awesome. And then became a high minute player. And he ended up averaging like 30 minutes a game on the year. But isn't that the definition of improved? Like
they won't even let you actually improve.
Right. You improved too much, so you're not eligible. Sorry. You needed to have started in a place where you were already playing 20 plus minutes. Like it just defeats
Yeah,
I
that
get
is a
what they're
that is
getting
that's,
at. The purpose of
That's
these
not-
rules is not
that's
about
not
the
right.
awards. The awards were viewed as collateral damage. Like the purpose of this rule is not the awards. The purpose of this rule is it's to encourage players to actually play and not sit out games, and it's to shame them into. That's the purpose of it. And so I understand the awards are collateral damage. And so I understand doing it for all NBA. Whether I agree or not, I understand doing it for all NBA. I understand doing it for MVP. I understand doing it for Defensive Player of the Year. I don't think anybody has ever said in the history of the NBA, oh, I can't load manage today. I might not get MIP.
It's not even, I'll bet you most people don't even know it. Like, I'll bet you like there's a lot of like players that don't even know that rule exists.
Some of them do now. Isaiah Hartenstein knows.
I'm sure he does now. I'm sure he does now. I'm sure he didn't last year.
Yeah, Dante DiVincenzo knows. I'll tell you that.
That's crazy. You know who's number 1 in defensive EPM this year?
Don't tell me. Let's think. Number 1 in defensive EPM. Can you give me the conference?
Western Conference.
Jaren Jackson? Is it? It's not Lou Dort.
It's not Lou Dort. No, that'd be hilarious if it was.
That'd be hilarious, but that wouldn't really jive with the on-off numbers that we were.
No. This one jives.
Could it be Caruso?
It's Caruso. Yeah. It's Caruso.
Yeah, I mean, that's like that stat I was saying earlier.
I know. That's part of the story. Like that's part of the story as to why Lou's numbers aren't good.
Totally.
Asar Thompson is number 2 at a plus 2.9. Wemby is 3.
He would have a very strong case, by the way, to be on the.
Has he played he's played enough, hasn't he? He's played enough, right?
You said Asar Thompson.
Yeah, Asar.
Oh no, he has not.
Amen.
I was thinking Amen Thompson. He would have a very strong case.
I forgot.
Yeah, he's played about 40 games.
He's played 40. Yeah. Oh, I forgot. He had the thing at the beginning of the season.
Yeah. Amen Thompson has a very strong case to both be on all defense and if it be on this fake.
He should be
under the year ballot. He's phenomenal. He's phenomenal.
Yeah. He's great.
We need the dunk contest next year to just be both Thompson twins. That's it.
Who wouldn't want that? Name one person that doesn't want that.
Make it only siblings. Make it only siblings who can dunk and do like brothers versus brothers or some shit. Do like the Thompson twins versus the Toppin brothers.
That's not bad.
And then like Obi Toppin's won the dunk contest. Jacob Toppin's been in the dunk contest.
He's been in it. Yeah.
Thompson twins are insane. And then just like hire a paid actor to be Mac McClung's brother. just like hire Frankie Muniz.
Who's like a NASCAR driver now, I guess.
I know. And you know what was amazing when I thought about that? Frankie Muniz did a race car driving movie as a Disney Channel original movie when we were kids.
What was it?
I don't remember. All I remember is that his name in the movie was Justin. Because
okay. Miracle in Lane 2.
Miracle in Lane 2. Disney Channel original movie. Miracle in Lane 2.
A 13-year-old boy who uses a wheelchair is determined to win a trophy like his athletic older brother. Based on a true story.
You know what? Honestly, he could recreate this character when he plays Mac McClung's younger brother. Determined to win a trophy like his big brother.
We'd have to ditch the wheelchair portion of it, but I think everything else would work.
You could use Frankie Muniz's car for Mac McClung to jump over.
Hey, this is the car from Miracle in Lane 2. Can you believe that Mac McClung jumped over the car from Miracle in Lane 2?
Have Mac McClung jump over the entire Malcolm in the Middle cast.
It's like, who is this? What's happening?
Who is this? Bryan Cranston?
Only like people that are 35 and older even understand what's happening. What is this? What's happening here?
Hey, if Bryan Cranston can save AMC Network, then he can save the dunk contest.
He can save the dunk contest. Yeah.
You know, there's never anything ever. There has never been anything that Bryan Cranston has been a part of, and it hasn't been better for his involvement. Never. It's never happened. Even Seinfeld. He's the most iconic Seinfeld side character. Everything that Bryan Cranston has done, he's just better. When he played himself on one of the most iconic actors playing themselves is Bryan Cranston playing himself on It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. It is one of the most iconic performances. Him and Aaron Paul being on It's Always Sunny playing each other is one of the iconic. It's one of the iconic self-play performances. That and Keanu Reeves in Always Be My Maybe, and Bill Murray in Zombieland. There's your top three.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Bill Murray.
Wait, was Bryan Cranston? He wasn't the big blue head on Power Rangers. Somebody just wrote a story about this. I'm trying to figure out if that. I don't think
he wasn't the blue Power Ranger.
Not the blue Power Ranger, but like there's like the big blue floating head that talks to the Power Rangers.
Yeah, that was Bryan Cranston.
Well, I'm trying to figure out if this is true. I'm trying to figure out if that's true.
What if that was like Walter White high on meth, and that's like Walter White's perspective.
The only problem is that he did not have a goatee.
That's true. Bryan Cranston is just everything about Bryan Cranston.
Okay, in the movie remake, Hunter in the chat says he was in the movie remake.
Wait, are we live?
Yeah, we're live.
We're live?
Yeah, man. We got hundreds of people watching us talk about Bryan Cranston's floating head and Frankie Muniz.
We're wasting so many people's times. No one came here for this. No one came here.
There's a lot of people here for this. This is amazing. Hey, go read Fred's feature on Shai. It's very good. There's a lot of anecdotes in there that I've never heard before. And so that's like really what you want out of a feature. And it's very good. So be sure that you go read it at The Athletic today. Is there a specific URL? I don't even know if our URLs work anymore. We had one, theathletic.com/down-to-dunk. I don't know if that is still available. Let me check. Hold on. Not heard anybody tell me anything about this in a while.
Yeah, Andrew, it's not like we're live. Take your time.
Listen. Still works. Yes, you can get it for The Athletic for $1 a week when you go to theathletic.com/down-to-dunk, and you can hit subscribe there. And you can get The Athletic for $1 a week, which is a great deal. It's a really, really nice feature. It's got some great artwork too. I like the artwork at the top. I think that's great. Okay, Fred, anything else that you wanna plug? Cats and Shoot. I'm a subscriber to Cats and Shoot. Go listen to Cats and Shoot.
Go listen to Cats and Shoot. Recording an episode later today with the great Big Waz from The Ringer, my guy.
Ooh, nice.
Yes, wonderful guy. Very excited. Honestly, like not incredibly close friends with Waz, but I would put at the top of my power rankings of people who I'm not close friends with, who I really want to be close friends with.
Yeah,
he's just an incredible vibes human being.
Absolutely. And when you see him, he makes you feel like you are good friends.
100%. He's the friendliest human being on the planet.
So friendly. So friendly.
You're great. Like, oh man, I guess I'm like really your best friend. Then it's like, oh no, I'm probably like number 907 on your list.
I was gonna say, yeah. It's like he is so nice and so friendly that he makes you feel like you're in the top 10 when you in your heart of hearts know you're in the bottom 1,000.
He's truly the greatest guy. So I'm having Waz on. I do a weekly Around the League notebook over at The Athletic. I actually have my lead item on something about the Thunder last week. If you want to go back and read that was on Friday. It was
on Caruso. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah. And really all the guard screens they set, and specifically how many screens they roll off of with their guards. Now Caruso is basically rolling off of more ball screens than any guard probably in the history of the NBA this season. So you can check a breakdown of that, and it's part of why they're so good at beating other teams when they trap Shai. He can just give it up, and he's got a guard, whether it's Wallace or Dort or anybody else, Caruso, and they can just create from there, score from there. So check that out over on The Athletic. Got my story on Shai that's up today, which you can go read and listen to the OKC Dream Team.
Yeah, do it. It's great. Patreon.com/OKC Dream Team. It's very fun. Okay, thanks so much for listening to our show. We'll be back on Friday with a regular Fry Pod. Thunder play the Grizzlies tonight. Hopefully we get to see John Morant play. And then it's not, and maybe Scottie Pippen Jr. is not even playing. So it's like, okay, who's playing guard for them? I guess it's just Bane handling, which did not go well against Dyson Daniels the other night. So we'll see what happens tonight. But thank you guys for listening, and we'll talk to you guys again on Friday.